So in our last lecture we talked about input types. So now we're going to talk about the input attributes. So input attribute that we already have. So first of all, I'm going to create an input. So input, so input type text, which is the most popular input type we always have. So here you remember what we said, that the input type text gives you the privilege of writing both text and numbers. So one other attribute we have is a name, which I've already explained in one of our previous lecture. We said the name gives your user, or gives the backend the privilege to access this particular input field. So with this name now, whenever you want to write the backend code, you can be able to access this particular input field. Let's say this input field is meant for full name. So whatever you want to, you can write whatever you want here. So whatever this input field is meant, you can just write here full name. So now another attribute we have is a value attribute. So the value attribute sets an initial value. It's used to set an initial value or a default value for your input field. For example, you have registered in a website and you go to your edit form, you find out that in that edit or edit profile, you find out that you may be seeing your name that you have already registered in the input field showing at the edit form. So they will be telling you to change it and put a new name if that's what you choose. So it is inside of the value such functionality are implemented. So instead of the value, we just set a default or an initial value for your input field. So here I can just set an initial value, like for example, if this is full name, you can have John Elton. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the actual name, but just using it. So John Elton. So by default there will be this John Elton there. So if it is in your edit or change profile whatever, you can be able to change your profile details. So you change the name and put whatever you want to put there. AZ. So John AI. So when you click submit, you find out that will be submitted. So this value is actually submitted to the backend. So the next one we have is a read-only. So the read-only would give your user that privilege to be able to click, but it will disable the input the field. So your user will not be able to change the value. So it always disables the field. So let's assume in this field you added read only to this particular text. So read only. So meaning that your user cannot be able to change the value like they did in this first one. So if I try, I can't, but user can focus on it. You can copy the text if you choose, and when the user click on submit, this value is actually submitted. The value inside of the read only is actually submitted to the backend. So now the next one we have is a disable. So the disable completely disable your input field. So the disable will completely disable your input field. Okay. So the disable will completely disable your input field. So changing the value, making sure that you cannot be able to use the value. So this is a disable. So the user can neither use, or this value can even neither be submitted. So it's just done as a written text there. So you can highlight and copy the text if the user choose. So the next one we have is Another attribute we have is a size attribute. So the size attribute is used to display the number of character you want to be visible. So numbers of character you choose and want to be visible. For example, so by default, when it comes to this particular input field, you may just want to display the visibility. It's just the size mostly deals with the visibility of an input field. So by default, the size of this input field is 20. You can decrease it. So by default it's 20. If I want it to be smaller, I can just say 10. So it's just going to be half of what it already is. Increase it, you have to give it any number above 20. So any number above 20 will increase it. So mostly this input type size can be used for your type text, type search, type URL, and many more. So another one we have is a max length attribute. So the max length attribute specifies the maximum length of characters you want in an input field. For example, in this place we already have John Elton. So I can choose that I want only 4. So I can just say 4, only 4. So when I come right 4, if I come and refresh, so let's say this thing is cleared and I try to put any value above 4, it will not allow me because I've already specified the max length to 4. So another attribute we have is the mini and max attribute. So to specify it, we are going to need to use a type number. So now this input type, the minimum and max attribute, we use to set the minimum and maximum number of a particular input field. So let's say we want to set the maximum length. So when I refresh this is a number. The number comes with this arrow that you can be able to increase or decrease the number. So I'm increasing it 1, 2, 3 upward as you want. You can even decrease it with the down arrow. So I can set a maximum number for this input field by using the max. So max, so let's say I don't want it to exceed 23, and the minimum I don't want it to exceed so the minimum I don't want to be lower than 4. So when I refresh, this number is actually going to start from 4. So it goes to start from 4. So look, going down. So when I refresh, this number is not going to go. It's going to start from 4. So I'm trying to go down, and it's stopping me. I'm trying to go up. So when I reach that 24, 23, it's going to stop. So this min and max attribute is mostly used for input types numbers such as your range, your date, time, and so many more input type. So another input type we have is the input type multiple. So this input type multiple is mostly used whenever you are trying to talk about files. So input type, so let's say I'm specifying this to file. So the input type multiple will allow your user to be able to click and select on more than one value. So for example, it's mostly used whenever you are for the file and the email field. So when I refresh, so the input type multiple, for example, normally you can click on your input field on your input type file and select on, you cannot be able to select on more than one option. So let's assume in I try to select on more than one option, it will not allow me. So but if I put the multiple, so the multiple is going to give me that privilege to select on more than one option. You see already it has come with this check bar, so I can be able to check and select on more than one option. So when I select, you see 3 files selected. So that's what the multiple does. So another attribute we have is a. So another attribute we have is a. So another attribute we have is a placeholder. So the placeholder is just like an interior label for an input field. So it's just an interior label that you use, just like the way we have the label element, we have the placeholder. So it's an interior label for your input field. So I can, instead of this input field, I can give it so I can say this is meant for your full name. Let me still go with full name. So when I refresh, you're going to see it here. So it's just an interior label that is going to be inside of your input field. So this stuff is not going to be submitted. Whatever this item, the characters inside are never going to be submitted. So another stuff we have is the required attribute. So the required attribute specifies that you have to input a value. It can specify that an input field can never be submitted without a value inside of it. So with the required attribute, a particular input field is not going to be submitted. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to create a submit. So input type submit. So let me create a input. So input type submit. So when I refresh, so the input type submit says that this input field cannot be specified. So if I try to see this, it's going to be input field. So the field can never be without me putting a value inside of it. So okay. So another attribute we have is a step. So it specifies the legal number interval for our input field. Okay, for example, in this number attribute, I can just come inside of this number and say I want the number to. So normally whenever you, for numbers, you can count. So this I can start counting 1, 2, 3, but you can set an interval, which means that it's going to count based on that number. So I can set 4. So when I refresh, so what it will do is it will counting by 4. So you see, so when I refresh, so it will start counting based on that 4. So start counting based on 4. So this can also be used in your date, time, and so on, and so many more input fields. So the next one we have is a autofocus. So the autofocus and autocomplete. So the autofocus specifies that an input field is going to be focused immediately the page reloads. So if I reload this page, so the moment I refresh, you find out that the cursor goes into this particular input field immediately. So that's the job of the autofocus. So the other one we have is the autocomplete. So like I said, we have talked about the autocomplete in our previous class. So we see that the autocomplete would so autocomplete, when specified on, so it means that whatever you are writing, the browser will help you complete it or predict to complete it based on the initial value you have inputted before. So the last one we'll talk about is the list, which we have talked before. So the list, so mostly when we were talking about the list. The list was used to. It's also another. So the like we say, the autocomplete helps when specified on will help predict if and predict for you based on the value you have inputted before. So in our next lecture we are going to talk about media. So see you in our next lecture.